Starting down when you see green.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our September 29th action meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, again, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Sugars for roll call.
Mrs. Arroyo,
Here.
Ms. Friedel,
Here.
Mr. Goodwin,
Here.
Mrs. Matlack,
Here.
Mrs. Neary, Mr. Avadia,
Here.
Mrs. Schultz,
Here.
Mrs. Tong,
Here.
Mrs. Seidel.
Here. Okay, first, we are going to start with our approval of minutes. I'd like to make a motion for approval of minutes from the board retreat special meeting dated August 3rd, 2020. Approval of minutes, board work session, special action meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated August 11th, 2020. And approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated August 25th, 2020. Mrs. Schultz, can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any changes, questions? I don't see any hands. So seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I've opened up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain from item 6.2 as I was not in attendance at that meeting.
Okay. Unanimous vote.
Okay, great. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Malaj, who's going to kick us off with some board recognition this evening.
I am. Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. I always look forward to the action meeting in September as we take the opportunity to introduce all of our new staff members. Now, unfortunately, this year, we can't have everybody here in the room with us and certainly wouldn't be able to shake hands as they got introduced. But I'm very excited to honor the following new staff members who have joined us in Cherry Hill for the 2020-2021 academic year. I'm going to go through and read them by category in which they work. We have two new campus police officers this year. First, at High School East, Mr. Paul Hafner, and second, at Rosa International Middle School, Mr. Edward Pinheiro. So both new campus police officers in Cherry Hill. Then we have some new cleaners. Rafaela Gonzalez, Francisca Medina Checo, Patricia Rivas de Hermosa, Ana Rodriguez de Vargas, Louis Walker, and Dante Iacovelli. We have two new secretaries in the district, both of whom are at High School West, Shannon Jingle and Crystal Wilkins. And now we have a large group of new teachers to the district. At Russell Knight, Lindsay Abesh. At Bret Hart, Christopher Ale. At High School West, Justin Arabia. At Bret Hart, Charity Baker. At Rosa Middle School, Tanya Creamer. At High School East, Dominic Caesar. At Kingston Elementary School, Nicole Chero. At Thomas Paine, Hannah Choi. At West, Sue-In Choi. At Johnson, Marie Shiraki. Teaching art in more than one elementary school, Catherine Cork. At the Alternative High School, Cameron Crawford. At High School West, Madison Sidis. Teaching health and PE at the elementary level, Dominic Dominguez. Teaching at Rosa, Christina Dustman. Teaching at Russell Knight, Jada Griggs. Teaching at guidance counselor at Kingston, Evelyn Hart. Teaching at High School West, Star Jefferson. Teaching at Carusi, Durya Kyoglu. Teaching at Barclay, Carolyn Kellerman. Teaching at Beck Middle School, Allison Leibovitz. Teaching at Carusi Middle School, Alexandra Lerna. At Sharp Elementary School, Sarah Miller. Teaching health and PE at a number of elementary schools, Robert Munoz. Teaching at Bret Hart, speech and language, Lindsay Meyer. A nurse, this is the new district nurse position. The additional nurse is Lisa Patrone. Teaching at Kingston, Rosalie Pareda. High School East, Catherine Pereira. High School East, Ryan Petrillo. A teacher coach at the district level, Jill Reichman. At Carusi, Kristen Reed. At Beck Middle School, Ismael Rios Lopez. At High School West, Andrea Robinson. At Beck Middle School, Nicholas Shade. Woodcrest Elementary School, Karen Schenke. Also at Woodcrest, Carrie Schmidt. At High School West, the Child Study Team, Kimberly Schwartz. At High School West, Teaching Social Studies, Phil Smith. At Russell Knight, Bree Sullivan. Woodcrest Elementary School, Rachel Volpe. And at Hart Elementary School, Jessica Weichel. Then we have some new educational assistants to the district. At Kilmer, Janny Burgess. At Horace Mann, Kelly Clark. At Rosa Middle School, Pamela Cooper. At East, Claudia Griffo. At Rosa, Nicholas Karcher. At Carusi, Angela King. At Bret Hart, Danielle Lalage. At Barclay, Beth Levine. At Cooper, Emily Martino. At Russell Knight, Melanie Mendel. At High School East, Nicholas Mortos. At Rosa, Savannah Ross. At High School East, Emily Santana. At the Alternative High School, Imani Shivers. And at Cooper, Shemaya Wilcox. And then we have some long-term subs, replacement teachers, who will be here for a substantial amount of time in a number of different schools. So first, teaching world language at the elementary level, Alex DeFlavis. At High School East, Stephanie Evans. At Kingston, Greta Gallagher. At West, Daniel Ginsheru. At High School East, Sabrina Grossi. At Knight Elementary School, Rachel Hain. At High School East, Brianna Manning. At Kingston, Caitlin Matthews. At Stockton, Casey Mazel. At Carusi, Chelsea McQuillan. At Horace Mann, Rachel Rodriguez. At Carusi, Shyla Rakowski. And a new SAC employee, Nabia Khan. Those are all of our new employees that have joined us the 2020-2021 academic year. We have a card and a pin that's being sent out to all of our new employees through interoffice mail. So congratulations. You joined an incredible staff. Again, the 1,700 staff members that we have in the district do such an amazing job on a daily basis. So I'm thrilled that these folks have joined us after going through a challenging and at times exhausting interview process. Thank you, Mrs. Seidel.
Thank you, and welcome to all of our new staff members. So I'm going to turn it back over to you again, Dr. Malash, because we have two presentations this evening.
We do.
Okay.
So first, I'm excited to welcome back to present to the board, Mrs. Val Schmid-Sadwin. Val, are you with us?
I am with you.
Hi, Val.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Good seeing you also. Well,
I am just getting your presentation up and ready to go. Give me just a moment. And hold on. Almost there. All right, Mrs. Sadwin, it's up and ready to go. We are all yours.
okay, great. So this is a presentation of the class of 2020 graduation rate and graduation pathways for the graduation assessment requirement. Okay, the next slide. So first of all, we take a look at the Cherry Hill 4-year graduation rates by race and ethnicity. Just want to make a note that these graduation rates are on an attending school basis for the 4-year graduation rate. As you can see, the East graduation rates are above 95% for all races and ethnicities, and the West graduation rates are at or above 90% for all races or ethnicities except for Hispanic students in 2020. Next slide now. Okay, now it's the graduation rates for economically disadvantaged and special education students compared to the total students. And I guess I should have said this earlier in the presentation, but the East, the kind of reddish, is on the left, and the West is graduation rates are on the right. You can see that the East special education student graduation rates are at 100%. Because West provides special education services to some special education students until age 21, it's not expected that West could achieve a 4-year graduation rate of 100% because those students, because of their IEP, will by definition take longer than 4 years to graduate in the district. Next slide. Okay, and so anyone who begins talking to me at all about graduation rates, I very soon take my page 62 of the original August 2017 New Jersey ESSA application that was approved. And because what's important here was right in that application, it said that the NJDOE plans to submit a waiver request that, if granted, would allow students with the most significant intellectual disabilities who are remaining in the school for more than 4 years as determined by their IEP teams to be included in the graduation cohort for the year in which they graduate and not to be represented as not graduating in prior years. And this, they said right in the application, will enable students to graduate when appropriate without negatively impacting their school's 4-year graduation rate. It was a proposed waiver. It was a great idea, but it never happened. So what categories of students don't graduate? First is the dropout. So the dropout includes both those students who actively drop out, but it also includes students who were enrolled in our district, but then didn't show up later at some point in time, and we can't figure out where they went. So the only code that is available to us for those students that have moved out, but we don't know where they went, is dropouts. So dropouts include students who actively let us know that they're dropping out, as well as these students that have just disappeared. The continuing student is a student that's actively enrolled in the district. Most of these students are these special education students for whom the district is required to provide services as needed until age 21. And because Cherry Hill West has the special education program providing services to special education students until age 21, they will always be expected to have a higher number of continuing students than Cherry Hill High School East. Then you have the category of transfer to adult education. These students left our district either because they have a few more credits necessary for a Cherry Hill diploma, but not a full year's worth of work, or they're working towards a state diploma or a GED. And then the final is the transferred out unverified. So if a student transfers out of state or out of country, the student is removed from our graduation cohort, and that student does not negatively impact our graduation rate. If a student transfers in-state, the student presumably will be picked up by the in-state district in NJ SMART and will count in the other district's graduation rate. If a student tells us that he is going to go to an in-state district, but ends up going out of state, the student stays in this transfer out unverified category and counts against us just as a dropout would. If we have documentation that the student did transfer out of state, then we can change the code. But once a student leaves the district and we realize that the student hasn't been picked up by another in-state district, it's often hard to find that student and get that documentation. Okay, next slide. So here's the count of the students who didn't graduate by category. And for East in 2019, the largest category was this transferred out unverified, but it's only 3 students. And in 2020 for East, it was 3 continuing students. In West in 2019, the biggest category is the continuing students. And in fact, almost half of the students who didn't graduate in 2019 fall into this continuing student category. And it would have been nearly 3 percentage points to the added nearly 3 percentage points to the 2019 graduation rate if they were not in the cohort. And then in 2020, the largest group is this dropout group with 12 students. Okay, next slide. Now we're moving from graduation rate to graduation pathways. And these are pathways for the graduation assessment requirement. And here we see East. On the left side is the ELA and on the left side is the math pathway. And as you can see, the majority of the Cherry Hill students meet the graduation assessment requirement with NJSLA or PARCC. The next biggest category is the substitute competency. The substitute competency are the alternate assessments such as the SAT, the PSAT, the ASVAB, the AccuPlacer. So these are the other state approved scores and assessments that the student met the requirement using. And then you have the per IEP, and then in 2020 there is a waiver. And so that's what we have here. And the next slide is West. And here for Cherry Hill High School West, again, the biggest category is the NJSLA and PARCC. The majority of the students meet it using that pathway. The next biggest is substitute competency. Then West does have a portfolio. They do have students that meet the requirement with the portfolio. And then the waiver is only applicable to 2020. And this was by governor's order because of the pandemic. The state testing was stopped, and also most substitute competency testing was stopped. And the state also stopped processing portfolios. The waiver counts and the per IEP counts were inadvertently mixed in this 2020 year. As part of my year-end data review, I identify students without pathways and then I go and find out what the pathway should be. In past years, most of the students who were missing the pathway had the pathway per the IEP. What I didn't realize until it was too late for 2020 is that Genesis automatically filled any student that had a missing pathway with the waiver code. So the number in 2020 of waiver and IEP is actually a combination, and some of those students in the waiver category really should have had a pathway per the IEP. Okay, and then that's basically the presentation of the graduation rate and the the graduation assessment requirements. Are there any questions?
I do not see any hands. Oh, I do. One hand, Ms. Friedel, and then Mr. Goodwin.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Do we have data into the reasons that students are dropping out?
Well, first of all, there aren't a lot, okay? Now, what I do see is that there are more than usual in 2020 for West.
Right.
In 2020, I feel is an unusual year. Perhaps we could go to the high school to try and find out what happened there. But like I said, dropouts are either kids who say, you know, I'm done with school, I'm dropping out, or they are students who were enrolled in our district, but they left, they didn't come back, and we're not sure where they could be someplace, they could be out of state getting a diploma, but we don't know. And so the only available code for us is the dropout code.
Mr. Goodwin?
So just to be clear, the pathway, when you're saying the pathway, those are students that are currently seniors this year?
Yes.
Or is that like all, just the seniors this year? Right?
Just the seniors, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Ms. Sadwin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Sadwin. It's always nice to see you.
Always good to see you also. Take care. Thank you.
Just for the board members again, so we present that tonight. We do get it's a directive from the state. There's a time frame in which that information has to be shared. We just finally got the updated information last week. That's why it was added for the presentation tonight. Mrs. Sadwin, as always, does the analysis for us. I can tell you that there is follow-up discussion that will take place at the high school level. We have high school level meeting next week. So it is something that Dr. Mahan, Mrs. Wethington, and I will discuss with the high school teams so they can go back in. There are individual stories, as you can imagine, for each one of the children, that goes through. I do appreciate that Val points out the piece, about students that stay with us until 21. It's something, and that's not a Cherry Hill-ism, our frustration. That does come up throughout the state as we talk to our peers, Mrs. Wethington especially, she talks to the cohort of folks, that work in pupil services. We have some wonderful programs that we serve children 21. It should not count against, that school because they run a great program. So always appreciative of the work Mrs. Sadwin does.
So Dr. Malash, when you say it counts against us, and this is more for maybe newer board members or community members who might be wondering, so again, these numbers, we have to report them annually. Is there a percentage we're held to? Are there ramifications of not meeting that percentage? Just want to give sort of a complete picture.
Yeah, there's always a state average. We are always above the state average for graduation rate across each of the categories. The goal is always 100% graduation for all of our children. With the programs, again, like I said, the programs that we run for children who stay with us until 21, High School West will never be at 100%. I think the number that Val used before was 3% difference that you would have seen. The other challenge is when kids move, and they say they're moving in state, but they don't go in state. So every child has a number. Val referred to it as the SMID, the Student Smart ID number. So if that child enrolls in another district in the state, every child has one unique number. It's similar to a Social Security number, although it's not Social Security. So then they get logged into a different school. If they move out of state, or they don't re-enroll in a public school or something like that in New Jersey, then we are stuck with those numbers. The big question always comes in about dropout, right? What does that look like? Why are kids dropping out? And again, there are a host of reasons that go into it. As Val did talk about, we've looked back through some of the initial numbers. 2020 was an anomaly because it was double the number of kids from the year before. And again, variety of reasons, as to why. But we will follow that up. We'll give more information to the board. We'll most likely come out through C&I where those discussions take place.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, sorry. I see Mr. Goodwin has a follow-up question.
Just one more question. Once again, that only are those numbers only counting about seniors? So like if a junior were to leave out of town right now and we couldn't catch up with that.
Yeah, Eric, it counts against us. If we have a kid that comes in as a freshman and parents say, we're withdrawing our child and we're going to move to Eastern Regional, and they never re-enroll in Eastern Regional, and they decide they're going to PA or someplace like that, that counts against us. We carry that as an albatross, and unless we can prove that we know where that child is enrolled someplace out of state, which is often difficult because if they tell us they're going in state, they go someplace else, it makes it a challenge to track them down. But yeah, it also could be kids that move in. We get children that move in here, February of senior year to go through, who for a variety of reasons may not be eligible to graduate when they arrive here in February of their senior year. That still counts against us as well.
Okay.
Yeah, these are not necessarily children that have the opportunity to spend 4 years with us. Again, as a board, we've had a lot of discussion about opportunity, and opportunity is such a key and critical word. When we talk about what these graduation rates are, when you look at the level of transiency, children that are coming in and out, and the impact that it has not just on children but on programmatically what goes on.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Okay, so Dr. Mosh, you're also going to give us an update on our We Return to Learn.
I am. So I'm very excited to present with and to take the back seat in the presentation as Dr. Mahan leads us in a discussion about the We Return to Learn plan. Dr. Mahan, as the Director of Curriculum, was the chair. Let me just get us almost there. The chair of the Return to School committees. And I think, Dr. Mahan, you can see that on your screen, yeah?
I can see it, yes, thank you.
Excellent. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Farah Mahan, our Director of Curriculum. She and I are going to give an update on the We Return to Learn. Dr. Mahan, take it over.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So you can jump right to the first slide, Dr. Malash. So I call your attention to the highlighted piece on this slide, in an ever-changing world. And I wanted to highlight this. This is part of our district mission statement, just because how appropriate is it that we are all being tested in new ways that we have never imagined. We can't often speak about preparing students for jobs that we've never even seen before, but we still have to be responsive and make sure that our curriculum is preparing them for this ever-changing world. So I'm confident that as a district, even though we are dealing with some very difficult and tough times right now, that we are adapting, that we have staff that is more than capable of adjusting to the demands of remote and a hybrid learning environment. And that part of this challenge is that we are planning for something that we have never experienced. I ask that you keep that in mind during this presentation and just think about those 5 highlighted words, in an ever-changing world. I wanted to kick off our presentation this evening with a few numbers, and I've shared presentations in the past where I've always started with numbers. So 15, I remind everyone that today was the 15th day of school. So although it seems like an eternity, the reality is that it is only the 15th day of school. And we face hurdles every academic year at the beginning where we have to adjust and make changes based on what we see at the beginning of the year. So again, it's the 15th day of school. 76. This is the number of technology-based professional development sessions offered to staff this summer. Hundreds of professional development hours were logged by staff. While these sessions were not intended to make staff experts, they were intended to prepare staff for the hybrid and remote learning environment. And these sessions were developed based on a survey presented to staff at the end of the academic year. There were over 30 presenters who again facilitated 76 professional development sessions for their colleagues. 80 is the approximate number of professionals who contributed to the We Return to Learn plan on a voluntary basis. And I highlight that word voluntary basis for the past 6 months. We cannot thank them enough for their level of commitment, their thoughtfulness, and time dedicated to the process. These professionals have helped to keep us on track. And I highlight and thank these professionals because as we are dealing with some very trying times and making adjustments, they are hearing what the community is saying. I am hearing what the community is saying. So when people are saying kids are crying, people are unhappy, that's a positive way for us to receive feedback. When we hear things like, you are doing a disservice to children and you're harming our kids. That hurts me at the core as an educational professional, because I know how hard and how much work went into developing a plan that we felt was in the best interest of all the students of Cherry Hill Public Schools. So we are listening. 692. We are tackling the digital divide. So although, again, we are dealing with some trying times, that 692 represents the number of Chromebooks deployed to staff after the start of the school year when our new devices arrived. These devices were deployed within 48 hours, 476 to elementary school teachers, 216 to middle school teachers. We have experienced some significant technology issues, some within our control, some not within our control. Today, I actually opened up my copy of Ed Week, and the headline article an article included is laptop delays, Zoom glitches, equity gaps, remote learning faces big challenges. And this is not just a Cherry Hill issue. This is a national issue that everyone is dealing with. So we're confident that our bandwidth is working, our devices are working. We continue to work with Google, Dell, Comcast, all of which have had technology issues over the past 15 days of school. Just yesterday, Microsoft sent out a notification saying that their systems were experiencing some outages. So, I remind you with this number because I don't think any of our organizations or platforms were designed or prepared to host millions of people, students and adults, learning and working remotely. 1,045. This is the number of certificated staff who have been working tirelessly to implement the Cherry Hill Public Schools curriculum with fidelity while adapting to the new demands of being a teacher during a pandemic. Again, there is nothing in any of our training that could have prepared us for teaching during a pandemic. We are adapting on the fly, we are making adjustments, and I commend all of our teachers who have voiced what they need to be successful in the classroom. And I also commend them even under some great scrutiny that they experience on a day-to-day basis. Our teachers have absolutely risen to the occasion and are providing a quality education and continuing to implement the standards of Cherry Hill Public School with fidelity. And 3,000, this is the number of devices and hotspots, and that's a plus sign next to that. We are, again, closing the digital divide. The number of Chromebooks and devices to allow internet connectivity in our homes that have been deployed to students to support the remote learning environment. So before I jump into the slides for the presentation, I remind everyone that school districts and organizations around the world are navigating how to provide the same high quality service and education that parents, students, and teachers are accustomed to during the pandemic. As educators, we have faced trying times, but this is something we could have never prepared for. And this includes everyone within the Cherry Hill Public Schools organization. So my next slide highlights how we are adapting. Here are a few pictures showing how we've adapted to ensure that our students and families are not food insecure with meal distributions, that students have access to books and high quality literature with free book distributions, that we continue to make connections with families, as you see in the picture in the center with Mr. Musiosha and some parents. We're continuing to build our community, and the whole concept of we are stronger, parents, community, and staff working together is what we pride ourselves on. And again, although we have had some missteps, we are making great strides to ensure that the students of Cherry Hill Public Schools are getting exactly what they need. So why are we here? We talk about what is the elephant in the room. Dr. Malash, you can go to the next slide. So again, I remind you, it's the 15th day of school. So over the past 15 days, we have heard from students, parents, teachers, community members, and this includes everything from emails to stops at the soccer field, to white papers that have been written by community members, to telephone calls. And some of the concerns that we are hearing, particularly around the elementary schedule, the amount of screen time, stress of remote learning on families, the trauma and social emotional learning piece, and the technology issues. So that's one really big component we've heard about. And the second is, are we prepared to return on November 9th? And what does that look like? So as we jump into this, I highlight all of that because we are responding, but more importantly, we are listening. So we've heard on several different occasions, we need to be more transparent. We need to communicate better. We need to have a better plan. And by evidence of this presentation, I hope it is clear that we are listening to parents, and we are listening to the community, and we are listening to our teachers, because we are all here for one thing. And I think irregardless of where we are with our Return to Learn plan, I think we can agree that we are all here to provide what is in the best interest of our students and staff. So how are we listening? So as I mentioned at the beginning, those 80 individuals, our We Return to Learn subgroups are reconvening. The elementary group on September 21st with Mrs. Friedel, who is one of our board members. The pupil services group will be meeting on September 30th. The high school on October 5th with Mrs. Seidel, and our middle school on October 5th with Mrs. Neary. So the committee members, although the majority of our work was done throughout the summer months, again on a voluntary basis, we are circling back to discuss some of the subtopics that you see listed on the screen. So impact and continuity of schedule, how much screen time, the work volume and expectations for students and staff, the length of the academic day, a nice balance between synchronous and asynchronous learning, well-being of staff and students, our technology needs. And there's one that I'm noticing that just came up in our previous conversation, and I will add it to my notes, is grading, and how are our students continuing to be graded throughout this social experiment, is what I will call it this evening. So how else are we listening? Through professional development. So we surveyed staff in June to provide those 76. Again, I connect back to that number of 76 professional development offerings that were offered throughout the summer. We launched another survey last week that was sent to all staff, and there were 4 simple questions asked. Did you participate in Summer Flex? Have you explored the virtual learning platform that has been developed since the spring for our staff to explore for support? What suggestions and improvements to support that virtual learning platform? And what type of professional development do you need to be successful? And I include this because sometimes our efforts may be construed as being reactive as opposed to being proactive. So we were being proactive when we provided that professional development in the spring, but now our teachers are saying that they need something different, and we need to respond to that and react to that. So we are continuing to build our catalog of professional development offerings to ensure that the teachers provide targeted professional development based on what they are asking for. So we have time for professional development through cooperative learning days, in-service days, department times, faculty meetings, and PLC time. And I can just highlight for you that based on the feedback that we have received from the survey so far, there have been some very specific things that staff are asking for. That includes how to administer and create assessments, more PD on VA MAP, which is for some of our most fragile learners, creative ways for students to submit videos other than Flipgrid, how to facilitate small groups, and how to teach in person and remote in a hybrid model. Again, many of these things are obstacles that we have never experienced before, and we need to continue to adapt and adjust to meet the needs of our teachers. Next, we are continuing to have our pandemic response teams meet at the school level, meeting the guidelines as outlined by the Department of Ed, and making sure that everyone feels safe for our return back to school in November. This next slide, I just ask you to take a moment to look at these images. And I include these images because as a nation and as a community, we are experiencing some significant trauma. School closures, job loss, the impact of COVID-19, death of family members and loved ones, as well as illness, social and political unrest, and businesses closing around us. So why am I sharing this slide with you? Because the social emotional learning piece and trauma-informed instruction are critical to our success. The health, safety, and well-being of our students and staff is a priority. So as we shared at the curriculum and instruction meeting on September 8th, Mrs. Wethington and Mrs. Minjan from the Pupil Services Office shared 3 different programs that we are currently implementing in our district to ensure that the mental health of our students and the emotional well-being of our students is addressed, whether that's through guidance counselors delivering these lessons, whether that's through health and physical education teachers delivering the lessons, and or the classroom teacher recognizing that he or she needs to stop and take a moment to address the emotional needs of our students. This is a priority. So just some quick clarifications. So far for our We Return to Learn plan, the only changes that have been made, again, in the first 15 days of school, is that we had clarification on the wearing of masks of staff while in a classroom by themselves being able to teach. We also have some clarification in regards to cameras. So we have always said that we strongly encourage students to have their cameras on. However, we recognize that students should not, under any circumstance, be being penalized if their camera is off, or if they step away from the camera, or if they are on mute. We have students who are coming to us under a variety of circumstances, and if a child is there and they are present and they are muted, I'd rather have them there, present and muted than not at all. So if we have teachers who are deducting points or changing grades based on that, that is something that as a district, we need to improve our messaging so that that is clear to staff that we want our students to be here and be engaged, and that every one of our students has a different circumstance and we need to adapt to that. I highlight one of my colleagues, Dr. Perry, sent out a notification to his staff, basically saying, how are we showing up for our students? Because if they're showing up, we need to be showing up. And we keep that at the forefront of everything that we do as we are making changes. So based on everything that I just went over, there will be additional changes forthcoming to our Return to Learn plan. We will be starting with the elementary schools because we have heard a significant amount of feedback. As the parent of 2 elementary school students, I will tell you, it pains me when I read some of the emails that we have been receiving because the struggle is real. Homeschooling, having kids at home, trying to work, balancing it all, getting on and off of Zoom and Google Meets and Google Hangout and who has what class and where's my child's workbook. I understand. And we want to make the Return to Learn for the elementary students positive and meaningful. And we want to reduce the stress that we have heard that is being endured by staff, students, parents, community members, caregivers, across the board. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Malash to talk about what we deemed as the elephant in the room. Are we prepared to return November 9th? Dr. Malash?
Thank you, Dr. Mahan.
You're welcome.
So we are prepared to relaunch or to launch the hybrid model the week of November the 9th. And honestly, our goal continues to be to have our students and our staff members in our schools together. We've taken a look at where we are and what's going on. We believe that we are well poised and well prepared to continue to implement the hybrid model, or to begin to implement the hybrid model the week of November the 9th. We've had a number of discussions, honestly, over the course of the last 2.5 weeks about what that schedule looks like. We would love to do a tiered return. We would love to bring back students and start that in a structured model. As we sit here tonight, we're not able to do that yet, but we would love to be able to do that. If we can, we will announce that and give parents time to be able to adjust their schedules so that we could put that into place. I believe that everybody wants us to begin and to have this ready to go. We have to make sure that we can do it in a manner that is conducive to continued learning, that's done properly, and that meets the developmental needs of our students across 3 levels. So yes, we are prepared for the reopening of school in the hybrid model the week of November the 9th. Additional information will certainly come out about that. People have asked, one of the questions that people have said is, if I chose full remote for my child, will I be able to change that when you come back November the 9th? Yes, you will. We will send out additional information. And if you want to make a change from where you were in terms of the structure for your child, you will be able to do that beginning the week of November the 9th. Information will come out during the month of October, asking you to share your perspective and to ask questions. Another thing, Dr. Mann brought this up earlier, the best place always to start with questions about what's going on and about your child's experience is at the school level. Certainly first with the teacher and then with the building principal, but to talk there about what your child's experience is. As Dr. Mahan pointed out earlier, the committees are getting back together, taking in the feedback, and she mentioned a number of times today was the 15th day of school. It seems like these 15 days have been the longest couple of years schooling for many of our children and many of our staff members. And we want to make sure that we are taking that feedback, that we hear it, and that we are not making determinations without being prepared to back up, what's going to take place. So please, if you have questions, always make sure you contact your child's teacher, follow up with the building principal, a great place to start with where we are. With the hybrid model. So the hybrid model still remains as in the plan that was adopted and is published on our website, where Mondays are collaborative learning days for all of our staff, and all of our students are on remote learning that day. Is the opportunity for both cohorts of students to be together, allows for the centering of that learning. That Monday is not a deep cleaning day. Our buildings are being cleaned every single day. They're being sanitized every single day. The electrostatic misters are being used. That's being addressed on a daily basis. That collaborative learning day, when the teams got together and put that into place and planned that out, it was to give the opportunity for all students in both cohorts to be together, so that the teacher could meet with all of her students, so that she could talk about what was going on, so that the children could see one another, so they could know that they were in the same spot as they prepared week in and week out to continue to progress in the curriculum. The hybrid model involves a Tuesday-Thursday cohort and a Wednesday-Friday cohort. Again, the schedule looks different than it does for the full remote, and that schedule is online. There will require transition as we get into that schedule. It will look different and it will feel different for staff members and for students. And we expect that there will be questions as we get into that during the month of November. Again, please ask those questions, contact the teachers, contact the building principals, certainly contact us about questions you may have as those are occurring. As a district, at the district level and at the building level, we're trying to improve and increase our communication with CHEA, with the collective bargaining group that represents our teachers, our certificated staff members. We want to make sure that the supports that are needed are put into place. We want to make sure that all the people that need to be at the table and having these discussions and moving forward are at the table, and that we are in fact having those discussions. We know that there are questions, and the questions exist among our professional staff members. I say it every time that I'm together and have the opportunity to speak at the board meeting. I would not trade our staff for any other school district. Our teachers, our support staff, the people that work in our buildings are dedicated to our students' success. We want to make sure that they have the tools and the support that they need, that they are in place so that the children can be successful. HVAC, again, we have an indoor air quality program that we follow. Our systems are operational, our systems are moving air as they are designed, and our systems are meeting the needs that the state requires us to meet. We want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. Our maintenance staff, our building staff continue to follow up, continue to maintain them, continue to address any issues that may develop with the systems. Safety protocols and PPE, again, we publish these. Children are being screened every day, and again, a good time to practice at home. Our staff members do their screening. Any visitors will be screened when they arrive at the buildings. Our athletic programs, our marching bands, there's extracurricular groups that have been meeting. There's a screening that takes place for them. Those screenings will continue. Again, the hybrid model allows us to keep a limited number of people in the building on a daily basis. We will continue with limiting access to the building, meetings, if at all possible, being done virtually. All of that is being addressed. PPE, we have an incredible amount of PPE, personal protective equipment, in our district. It's been distributed to our therapists, been distributed to our child study team members, been distributed in our buildings, our nurses, the principals, the custodians. They have those materials in all of our buildings. We are prepared and ready to go to use them. We have the reusable masks that were distributed. All of our staff members received these reusable masks. We purchased 13,000 masks for all of our students there at all of the buildings, ready for when the children return to school. And a special thank you, one of our community members, a gentleman named Scott Soffin, who is philanthropic in his efforts to support especially our staff members, our school district, and our community, donated all of the masks for our staff members, donated 2,000 masks to our staff members. So a very special thank you to Mr. Soffin for his commitment, and again, continued commitment to Cherry Hill. We will continue to follow the spacing protocols. We will continue to follow the guidelines that we've established and we've published that are in our plan. One of the other questions that's come up often in the emails that we've received from folks is, what if there's a positive result? What if there's a positive case? Again, we work with the County Department of Health in terms of how we address it, in terms of the notification to people that may have been exposed. Having a positive case in a building does not mean that the entire building shuts down or that everybody must be quarantined. There are specific questions the Department of Health asks. They go through and talk about, were people wearing masks? Were people within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes while not wearing a mask? Did they eat together? Did they travel together? Are all common questions, should the questions come up. There are, again, privacy guidelines that we have to follow with positive results. We'll share information, again, based on the plan that we have published that's on our website and based on the guidelines that we receive from the Department of Education. I encourage folks to please continue to stay in touch. And as Dr. Mahan mentioned, I believe our staff members are doing a Herculean job of lifting this mountain and moving it forward so that the learning continues for our students. That's not going to come without challenge. There are challenges that absolutely exist. She alluded to some of those that exist because of what we're dealing with technology. And again, that's not just a Cherry Hillism. That is happening throughout South Jersey, throughout New Jersey, throughout the United States, and throughout the world. We do like to think at times in Cherry Hill that we are in a little bit of a bubble, that we are unique. This is one of those situations that we are not unique in what we are dealing with and the challenges that we are dealing with, whether it's in school districts that are on full remote, school districts that are on a hybrid, are dealing with the same or with similar challenges. So again, continue to stay in touch. Please always make sure that you contact the building first. It's one of the first places to go for accurate, appropriate, and timely information as it directly impacts and affects your child. And then Dr. Mahan, do you want to talk a little bit about, just this last one before we get to the question?
I'll wrap up. So just to bring our presentation full circle and closing where we started. So I ask that you think about this highlighted statement again, these 5 words, in an ever-changing world. I ask that you keep this at the forefront as you formulate questions, reflect, and consider the challenges we are navigating. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we sent out another professional development survey. And the survey responses, there were 562 of them, and I've started to go through and categorize them and come up with themes. And one of the most powerful statements that I saw or read today was, we have to do it. I don't know what I need, I don't know what I don't know. I will know soon. So for the staff member who wrote this, I think this truly exemplifies what we are dealing with as a district. No professional development, no training or formalized schooling that we have could have prepared us for educating our students in a pandemic. And I end with this slide, different from other slides that we have had that just ask for questions. So I ask for questions because questions help to lend to clarity and provide for transparency, which so many have said we have not been. Feedback, we ask for feedback because it helps us to reflect and make things better for the students that we serve. And that is our #1 priority, the students that we serve. And discussion because it helps us to glean clarity on where we are going, and how we will get there. I am confident that as a school district, we can do this. I am confident that we will be able to provide our staff what they need from a professional development perspective to be successful. And I'm confident that we will be able to respond because, again, our most fragile learners, our elementary school students, are not meeting with success across the board. And we need to make sure that we are adapting and adjusting. And I end with happy 15th day of school. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan.
You're welcome. Do we have any questions?
Board members, could you please raise your hand? Okay, I saw Mr. Avadia first, then we'll go to Ms. Friedel.
Hey, so first of all, thank you, Dr. Mahan and Dr. Malash, for that presentation. Well done for, I think it's a lot of great areas covered. In addition to really covering our strategic vision goals that we developed in February or January, I should say, adopted in February when we didn't know what would hit. A lot of those themes are here, and I really appreciate going back to that. I guess my only question is, so Dr. Mahan and Dr. Malash, you both alluded to tiered if possible, hard to see how that might roll out. But I just want kind of clarity for folks that are really focused on that November 9th date. Does tiered mean some people might go back before, or does tiered mean the first people would go back November 9th week, others later? Just from a timeline perspective, if we don't have spikes, if things continue along these lines, what would that tiered replacement look like in logistic fashion?
Great, thanks, Ben. So tiered would be if we were able to bring students back prior to November 9th. And again, that we would look at, as Dr. Mahan talked about, some of our learners, because of where they are developmentally, to try to get them back into the buildings earlier. I don't know if we're going to be able to make that happen, but that's a discussion that's taking place. November 9th, we would be running the full hybrid schedule, beginning that week of November 9th. So all students who are expecting to return to school as part of the hybrid schedule would be returning to school the week of November 9th if they had not already come back.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Friedel, I saw your hand second.
Great, thank you. Dr. Mahan and Dr. Malash, thank you for the presentation this evening. I really liked the format, and I love the end, Dr. Mahan, with questions, feedback, and discussion. So a couple of questions or feedback or discussion. Attendance, you have your list of things you're looking at, and you just added grading. As somebody, Dr. Malash, I think it may have been you, noted, or maybe it was you, Dr. Mahan, that there's been a lot of technology glitches, and it's happening in the students' homes as well. So, if their internet goes down or they get kicked off of the computer for a few hours, bless you.
Sorry.
It happens. How is attendance being looked at? Is there a mechanism for knowing what happened that the student wasn't online? Another comment is when we're looking at our elementary and I guess preschool students as being priority, I'm sure that in that priority listing also are still children with IEPs and 504s. I know this has been very difficult for that subgroup of children as well, in the remote instruction. I think it's difficult on everybody, but I think they also are a population that we should be thinking about. And I just want to say I did join the elementary meeting, and I really appreciated being there, and I really appreciated the thoughts and the sharing of the administrators, the teachers that were in that committee. And I really felt when I got off that you all are listening. Very, very, a very important factor. And I have one more question. And that's on the professional development, because I know in the survey that was one of the issues that the teachers raised a lot of, and I know we've done a lot of things over the summer, but we are going to be implementing, for example, the SEL curriculums, which I'm sure there is a training component. We can't expect teachers to be implementing this new SEL. And I'm not sure when we have our first professional development training on the calendar. And it's so critical because, you know, children, teachers, parents, we're all experiencing this trauma. So that's definitely something we want to get trained and working on. So if you could comment on the plan for that at some point. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I can jump in quickly with, I'll start from the question at the end. Professional development for the SEL curriculums that have been rolled out. Mrs. Wethington and Mrs. Minjin have been working very closely with guidance counselors, PE and health teachers, and other nurses and other individuals in the buildings to already start that professional development training. I do not know offhand how that will trickle down ultimately to the classrooms, but the training has begun where our guidance counselors are working side by side with our classroom teachers to implement that curriculum with fidelity. We do have our first in-service day on November 13th, which the details of that day have not been finalized yet. But we also have, as I mentioned, cooperative learning days. That's the Monday in the afternoon for professional development, faculty meetings, department time, PLC time for staff to receive their training. Thank you for the compliment regarding the elementary return to learn committee. As you mentioned, yes, elementary school, our preschool learners and students with IEPs are the priority. I would add to that list as well that our ESL students, our L families, are also meeting with success. And for attendance, we have been, you know, very candidly all over the place because, you know, sometimes we have it where our network goes down. Sometimes we have it where Google goes down. Sometimes we have it where, you know, Microsoft or Meet is not functioning with our Chromebooks. So all of that has been taken into consideration. And again, if that messaging to our staff and to administrators and across our community is not out there, then we need to make sure that we restate that again, because if students are trying to log on and trying to connect, we want to make sure that they are given credit for being there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin.
I just wanted to just reiterate from this report and this report out, to me, it is very clear that that administration is listening and hearing what the community has to say and really responding. And I just really appreciate just how you've laid out everything and addressed all the issues. I know there's going to be more, and I also understand that we're dealing with just uncertainty, but I just really appreciate how you guys are plowing ahead and really trying to really make sure that we are meeting the needs of all the students, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Hi. I don't see any other hands up. So again, thank you, Dr. Mangan and Dr. Malash, for a very thoughtful presentation and update. And I look forward to participating in the high school Return to Learn committee shortly, tomorrow.
And Mrs. Seidel, if I could just say, just to reassure the board, as well as the community members, we will get this right. We are Cherry Hill. We pride ourselves on being the leaders and being at the forefront. And right now we are taking a few steps that may have taken us in the wrong direction, but we will get back on track because others are looking to what we are doing. And we have been the leaders and we will continue to be the leaders. So the pandemic will not take us down.
I have no doubt that you are correct there.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So after those two great presentations, that takes us into correspondence. And before I see if anyone raises their hand to share any correspondence with us, I just want to read out the list of school board candidates coming up in the general election on November 3rd. We have 5 people running for 3 spots. We have Corinne Elmore Stratton, Carol Matlack, John Papica, Aslahan Katmak, and Miriam Stern. Okay, by a show of hands, does anyone have any correspondence to share this evening? Okay, Ms. Friedel.
So I just want to say, and times are blurring, so hopefully this wasn't from the last meeting. I did attend the cultural proficiency meeting. Did we already talk about that, Carol?
No, we didn't. It was right after our last meeting.
Okay.
And much of the cultural proficiency meeting was a recap of our board presentation.
Okay.
But if there's something from that you would like to add, please go ahead.
So I just want to say that, as Carol said, the students did their presentation, and in fact, I think there were a few more students who were able to join the cultural proficiency meeting, they started to go through the goals of the committee. However, you know, time is always our friend and our enemy, and we ran out of time for all the goals, but the students did a wonderful job presenting at that meeting, just as they did at the board meeting.
Thank you for that update, Ms. Friedel, and thank you for joining Mrs. Matlack at that important committee. Okay, anything else? Any other correspondence? Okay, I don't see any hands. Do we have student representative reports tonight, Dr. Malash?
We do not have the student representative reports tonight.
Okay.
I met with the 4 board reps last week, Tuesday or Wednesday. Dr. Chapman, Dr. Perry, and Mrs. Wilson, I met with them. I will expect that they will have reports for the October meeting. We'll probably do 2, one at the work session. I will let you know, and if so, we'll just add it as a correspondence item.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that then brings us to our first public comment period. First public comment period is for agenda items that the board will be acting on this evening. When submitting your public comment via email for the first public comment period, please indicate in the email subject line the agenda item number. And please also indicate, oh, nope, I already said that. And as I've said for the past several months, you may email your public comments to lshugars@chclc.org. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Sugars to see if she's received any correspondence for the first public comment.
I do have a few. First one, I believe, pertains to the BOE Return to Learn plan. And my name is Chris Benedetto, and I live at 2 Thackeray Lane, Cherry Hill. As always, thank you for your service to our community, our schools, and to our kids. While I was unclear what triggered the sudden change to not go back to school after reading the article on 70and73.com, I think I understand the issues better. from the perspective of the teachers. With that said, I am surprised that this happened so close to the start of school and there was not a fallback plan from the district. As well, with so many national and state indicators trending positive for the past few months, cases, hospitalizations, restaurants, and gym reopenings, etc., I am surprised the teachers were not more inclined to go back. And what baffles me is how seemingly disconnected the district BOE and teachers union seems to be. This disconnect only hurts the kids. So to brass tacks, what is the action plan to ensure kids and teachers are back in school November 9th in Cherry Hill? Who owns each part of the action plan? What are the objective measures or benchmarks to completion? Can we get weekly updates on progress against these measures? It's not enough to say we have a plan and hope to go back to school. It is not enough to point fingers at one group or another. We are all in this together. I am asking for clarity around the issues and a cadence on progress to close them. Bottom line, like you, I am very concerned for the physical and mental health of all involved, but mostly, especially, I'm concerned for the kids. We need our BOE and other leaders in the community and state to make rapid progress toward reopening November 9th. There are ways to reopen safely. There are ways to work together, so let's find them and get it done. The next item is from Patricia Kipnis, 1112 Cotswold Lane. Please provide details as to how the district will comply with Executive Order 175 and return students to in-person learning immediately, as no health and safety reason has been articulated for the pivot to an all-hybrid model. If the concerns remain staffing and teacher training, how are those issues being addressed? Also, to the extent the district is hearing primarily from elementary school parents, please know that middle and high school parents like myself are also concerned about the detrimental social-emotional effects of prolonged virtual learning. While the teachers have done an excellent job adapting to these circumstances, there is no substitute for in-person learning and the opportunity to interact in person with teachers and peers. Isolation is extremely difficult for preteens and adolescents, and those students must be afforded an in-person option as required by New Jersey law set forth by EO 175 immediately. My name is Steffi Graff and I live at 514 Queen Anne Road. On August 26, 2020, Governor Murphy announced an allocation of $100 million from the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund to assist public school districts, charter schools, and Renaissance school projects with defraying costs associated with reopening schools for the 2021 school year in wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. How much did Cherry Hill receive, and please detail what those funds will be spent on. Carolina Bavad, I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly, 1213 Crockwell Road. Dr. Malash and the board have heard plenty from parents. How about some thoughts from the kids? These are being shared with the permission of the students' parents. Virtual school makes me feel bored. I used to like school, but now I don't. Roman B, first grade. Virtual school makes me feel dumb. I get lots of headaches. I hope you and the principals can figure something out. Sam S, second grade. Virtual school makes me feel sick and like my brain is kaboom. Charlie D, first grade. Virtual school makes me feel exhausted and like I want to quit. I don't like being on the computer all day. Joseph H, second grade. Virtual school makes me feel terrible like a dog. Nora H, kindergarten. Virtual school makes me feel tired because my eyes hurt from looking at the computer. Nico B, second grade. Clearly children are not well served through virtual education. Please bring them back to school. Tamara Rudrose Steinberg. I grew up in Cherry Hill and so did my husband. My parents grew up in Cherry Hill. I grew up the daughter of a Cherry Hill teacher. We moved back so our children could attend Cherry Hill schools. I had never been more disappointed and discouraged in the town that I grew up in than I am now. I am watching my daughters who love school cry every morning because they have to log on. The programming that you are offering our children is below par. You purchased it and failed to train our teachers. You were trying to program the students by giving them apps to learn rather than having the teachers teach. Your last minute plan is a failure. The children need to be in school. That is all the comments for the first public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Dr. Malash, I'll turn over to you for superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel, and I keep them brief because we have talked quite a bit already this evening. But a couple of things that I do want to highlight as we are here at the end of September. As Dr. Mahan and I mentioned earlier, today was the 15th day of school. So the days are progressing and they will start to progress relatively quickly as we move into October. We go straight through the month of October and then schools are closed. There's no instruction the first Thursday and Friday in November. We will have virtual instruction on Election Day. We did get clarification. Folks may remember that over the summer, the governor announced that schools would be closed on Election Day for voting. Our schools are not used as polling places. We received clarification at the end of last week from the Department of Education that we may continue with virtual instruction on Election Day. Our extracurricular activities as they are scheduled will be able to continue as well. I have been excited by the extracurricular activities that have been taking place. We've had sports at the middle schools and high schools and marching band at the high schools that have been taking place. Thank you to Mr. Barrow, the Director of Athletics, to Mrs. Sugars and the folks in her office, and Mrs. King, the Transportation Office, for being able to set up transportation so that students who need rides are picked up to bring them back to the 5 secondary schools for the practices and rehearsals, and then to take them home again afterwards. It is good to see students in our schools and on campuses. Schools need students in them. Again, our goal is to bring the children back, so that they are here, and we continue to work forward to that. I ask folks to please make sure that they stay familiar with the information that we're putting out about guidelines. Should you attend an athletic event, we are still limited with the number of people that can be there. There are specific guidelines that we are following. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with them before you arrive at an event or before you attend an event so that you know what's taking place. Again, please make sure you maintain communication with your children's teachers, with the building principal. Please make sure you're following the information that comes out from the district. We do send out our update postcards every week. They come out every Friday. There's also additional emails that are sent out during the course of the week. We do use email to get direct information home to parents. That information goes to the emails that are contained within the Genesis Student Management Program. So if you're not getting them, please make sure you update your information in Genesis. Contact the building secretary, the building principal, your child's school. We make sure that we have the accurate information, the correct information, so we can follow through and make sure that that all gets out there. Again, we appreciate people's support and their patience and their compassion. Again, our responsibility, one of the biggest areas of responsibility we have is to help and assist in providing calm for our children as we're going through these challenges. These are challenges. They will continue to be challenges. There is no doubt about it with what's going on. Again, moving forward together, supporting one another is the best that we can possibly do. And again, we'll support the children and help the children as we continue to move forward. Again, special thanks to all of the custodians and to the cleaners for the work that they and the maintenance folks that they are doing on a daily basis in our schools, making sure that the high touch areas are being wiped down, doing the disinfecting every single night in the buildings, making sure that the buildings stay clean and prepared and ready to welcome our children back into them so they can join the teachers back in schools.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move into our action agenda, and I will start with curriculum and instruction. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 1, approval of attendance at conference and workshops for the 2020-2021 school year. Item 2, resolution approving service agreements for the 2020-2021 school year. Item 3, approval of out-of-district student placement for 2020-2021 school year. Ms. Matlack, could I please have a second?
Yes, I second that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I am opening up the online voting, so board members, you can cast your votes. Oh, wait a minute, now I'm opening up the online voting, sorry. Okay. We have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into business and facilities. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 1, financial reports. Item 2, resolution for the award of transportation. Mrs. Schultz, can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
I'm opening up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain to Henry Shine on the bill list, please.
Okay. And we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, great. Next, we'll move into human resources. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 1, termination of employment certificated. Item 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Item 3, appointments certificated. Item 4, appointments non-certificated. Item 5, leaves of absence certificated. Item 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Item 7, assignment salary change certificated. Number 8, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 9, other compensation certificated. Number 10, other compensation non-certificated. Number 11, first reading of revised policy. And number 12, other motions. Schultz, could I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Whoops. Open up the. All right, I've opened up the online voting. Okay, and we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move into policy and legislation. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 1, first reading of policy. Item 2, second reading of policy. Item 3, resolution for recognition of Week of Respect. Item 4, resolution for recognition of School Violence Awareness Week. And Ms. Friedel, could I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Ms. Matlack?
I was reading through the policy today, 1648, and I wanted to ask a clarifying question on a term that's used under item number 2, professional learning. It talks about mentoring and induction. And I was just wondering if I wasn't sure how the term induction was being used in this sense.
So induction is the welcoming of new staff members that are coming into the district, and the process, them beginning and working in Cherry Hill.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't, when it said, and the item underneath that to be provided induction, I wasn't clear on that, so.
Yeah, it's the welcoming training, Mrs. Matlack. What page are you looking at?
I believe it is page 9. Page 9.
That's correct.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs.
You're
Matlack. Okay. Seeing no other questions, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, I'm going to open up the online voting. Board members can cast their votes.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote. Great, thank you. We don't have any items to vote on for strategic planning, but I am going to turn it over to Mr. Avadia to lead us in a discussion on our strategic planning initiatives.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Seidel. So just a couple words to kind of get us started. Mrs. Sugars really has done the heavy lifting here to translate our last committee meeting and some back and forth with the committee that was very participative in terms of, what do we want to tackle as a committee this year? And so really, I mean, Mr. Sugars did all the heavy lifting, but the idea is that, and I'll sort of defer to Ms. Sugars maybe to take us through, but the idea is that we have from October's meeting until June 2021's meeting, scoped out in terms of topics that really need to happen. Typically, the way this looks is that we'll get to a section and a board member will say, we really need to talk about that. And we collected over time, unscientifically, some of those ideas and thought about, well, there's no time like the present, and there's no year to put in a Herculean amount of work on strategic planning like this one. So the idea, the way we've organized this, and I guess this is something that will be shared in the next Friday memo maybe, but is that we go from, one of the things that we came away from our last strategic planning discussion is we really need to be working toward bond timing. No guarantees exactly what it will look like, where it will be, but the when is critical to informing our work as the board. So that's something we're going to tackle in October. November, we move into a discussion about, new versus rehabilitation of schools. That's something we hear about, think about a lot, but that has some really, interesting and difficult and complex conversations around it. Then, December, we go into a discussion about districting and what's our point of view on the board? How do we get input in terms of who goes to what school based on where they live and what's going on. January security, we look at February 2021 by this point at parallel paths. So the idea, I mean, without getting into the parts and pieces, is to both bring experts around the table, with our administrative leads as well, really giving us a lot of good content, but having some of the discussions that seem to be critical to really shaping our path forward. Everything from alternative funding to bond, to the footprint, to different types of projects. And of course, one of the critical pieces is really bringing Garrison to the table, as well as a lot of other experts that will kind of inform our discussion. It seems that the board from our last talk about this really wants to be involved in a lot of these discussions. So strategic planning as a committee starts to be like a tee up and sift of some of these big topics into things that we can discuss as a full board. And with that, I'll sort of pass it to Mrs. Sugars to take us through maybe the next step of the thought of this.
So when we put this together, it was really kind of a plan that we already had in place that sort of got sidelined by the fact that we went into the situation that we're in and we weren't able to kind of finish it out. So it was important to kind of pick up where we left off and make sure that we continue those discussions. It is an overwhelming amount of information that has to be looked at and shared with the board. And so, it's very important that we put this schedule together and kind of mapped out what that was going to look like, how we were going to stay on task. It's a monthly committee meeting, so we don't have a tremendous amount of time together. So we have to make sure that we use our time very efficiently, and then that we can, as Ben said, then kind of parlay that into information that we'll share with the board. So really, we had done the demographic study starting in December. We had done the demographic study last year. We need to revisit that and, kind of answer some of the questions that we heard in the last bond referendum about redistricting and consolidation and can we close schools and things of that nature. So that's some of the discussions we'll have. We need to go back and visit our security plan, make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward with that. And then really in February, kind of as we were also developing and finalizing our budget, talking about what does our budget look like, and what does it look like if we don't have a bond, and how do we address the multitude of facilities issues that have to be addressed? Is that possible? And if so, we've been talking about parallel paths. What does that look like? And then really from March on, we really start to kind of hone in on what type of projects we're going to support, and really start to think about what does a bond referendum look like and what kind of projects would we include. And that's really going to be a multi-meeting discussion. But I'm excited. In October, we will have our bond counsel, our financial advisor, and our architect with us. And I think that's going to be a really interesting.
Great. That sounds terrific. Before I see if anyone, excuse me, if anyone else has any other questions, Mr. Avadia, just one comment that I had. Some of the topics that you mentioned that are coming up on the strategic planning agenda are, as you mentioned, some really big, weighty topics, but also ones that have been discussed a lot over past months, the past years. So I'm wondering if in your forming these monthly discussions, you've talked about creating some materials for the board to read in advance, just sort of reminders about the information that's already been out there, the research that's already been done, the things that have already been done. Is, as Mrs. Sugar said, there's a limited amount of time for these discussions, and a lot of the work has been done, and it just needs to be sort of tied all together in a nice package to tee up the conversation. So I'm hoping that there's a way that we can make sure that we get that information out there and ask every board member to commit to reading it and digesting it in advance of these discussions to make them more productive.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, Ms. Seidel, that's really a great point. And, one of the ways that we kind of put language to that in the committee forum is to say, there's a lot of stuff out there that's really good. And how do we circle back, not only with the topics, but also even with the groups, that can't, I know ad hoc wanted to be involved. I'm sure safety and security and alternative funding, but how do we roll this up into the board's plan so that it's not forever, the ad hoc plan, or, so that everything rolls up into, so that's one. And I think, is it a lot of work to your point? Yes. Has some of it absolutely been sketched out? Yes. The other thing about it is that some of the work is somewhat summative. In other words, if we don't have lots of, new sources of potential funding, we really, I think, will struggle to talk about, like rehabbing a lot of our footprint. So there is. Now, I think the committee is very on board with doing all that work. I know the full board will be as well, but I think it's a great point, is that we really need informed discussion. It's not, we can't be starting over, because this is years of work that's been done, and that has to be honored. And also we don't have time to start over. So, absolutely, we got to hit the ground running. And for me, I'm convinced this set of topics is the right one to really navigate. The only other point I'll make is that it's much more clear when you see this document, it's much more clear early than it is later, because later there's going to be a ton of follow-up, I think, from things that are discussed earlier. So you'll see that it gets a little hazier as we approach the end, but also should be much firmer as we approach the end. So there's definitely a time piece to the whole thing as well, too.
Great. Well, thanks to both you and Mrs. Sugars for putting in that work. It sounds like a great strategic plan.
And we'll share the calendar out, the plan with the board this Friday.
Okay.
In the memo. Why don't you guys get a chance to talk about it tonight, and Mr. Avadia present it.
Okay.
And then each of the other committees will be doing a similar
Great.
calendar, so you see the crossovers.
Mrs. Schultz's hand was up, and then I'll go and see if anybody else has follow-up.
Yeah, so I was just going to comment. I like the new structure of it, laying the calendar out, because I think it will just help us understand what's coming. And so then if you as a board member want to kind of do that self-research on your own too, it'll allow for that, because we have a nice outline of what's coming. I was also going to kind of say, I'm glad that we're having the redistricting conversation soon in the discussion or reorg, because I think that discussion may change a lot of the future conversations. So it'll just maybe save us a lot of time in regards to like, what changes do we want to make to our buildings? What do we want to include in the bonds? Because that the result of the redistricting conversations could maybe have cause us a lot of pivots in our plan along the way. So I really appreciate that conversation being really early in the discussion for strategic planning so that we don't waste a lot of time changing direction or course along the way. So I just wanted to, I really do appreciate that.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands at the moment. I'm sure we'll have more questions after we all have an opportunity to review the document. So thank you very much, Mr. Abadia.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us into our second public comment. The second public comment is for any other topic. When submitting your public comment via email for the second public comment period, please indicate in the subject line, in the email subject line, second public comment item. You may email to lshugars@chclc.org. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Sugars for public comment.
I have a couple for the second public comment. The first is from Jeff Padowitz, 110 Kilburn Drive. I'm referring to the report I sent to the school board and is included as a PDF in this email entitled Analysis of New Jersey Census Based on Special Education System, prepared for the New Jersey Department of Education by Augenblick, Pollock and Associates, October 2011. I'm also going to mention the term maintenance of effort. From the report, the state's implementation of the new special education funding system was derailed after only 1 year. Even within the first year of full implementation, districts whose potential increase in funding exceeded a certain amount had their increase capped. That means that the new system was never fully implemented for all districts. Remember, putting New Jersey education aid for 2021 for Cherry Hill, the difference between capped and uncapped aid was $12.95 per pupil. We are number 469 out of approximately 600 school districts. Approximately 380 school districts total have a deficit of less than $500 per pupil when comparing capped aid to uncapped aid. So district state aid funding does not follow the at-risk student into the Cherry Hill School District in an equitable fashion. But the New Jersey Supreme Court in effect ruled that SFRA was constitutional. Because SFRA was a uniting funding system and funding was followed the at-risk student in each district equitably. They choose to ignore the facts of SFRA and capping. Are the school board members aware of the term maintenance of effort on the federal level? Recall the 52% cut in direct state aid approximately 10 years ago when we were given approximately $7.9 million when our uncapped direct state aid was calculated to be approximately $35 million. Those cuts were deemed to be done equitably. They were not. At first, almost all of our special ed categorical aid was cut. That was changed to cutting equalization aid while maintaining less cuts in special education aid, but included in equalization aid calculations is 2/3 of the census-based aid to special education calculation. This is a wealth equalize and cap, so the state was still significantly cutting direct aid to special education. The federal government either choose to ignore this fact or got confused and just focused on the differences between the CAT special aid from year to year. Federal governor ruled that New Jersey was not in violation of maintenance of effort requirements. Our students and community continue to be shortchanged. School board and administration, please, like other districts have, take action. Next is from Pam Jenoff, 1601 Mayflower Lane. I am the parent of 3 children in the district and one of the co-founders of the Cherry Hill Parents for Safe In-Person Learning, a group which now numbers close to 800 members. Presently, the school district indicates that it meets all the state's health and safety guidelines to reopen, yet the district remains closed until the arbitrary date of November 9th. The reasons given for the delay in hybrid learning were time to enable the teachers to prepare and staffing challenges. However, the teachers only asked for 1 to 2 weeks to prepare, not the 9 weeks that the district decided upon. Additionally, Dr. Malash has stated that the district can manage the staffing needs for reopening. There is simply no basis for remaining closed for so long while our children and our district continue to suffer. The latest studies, as reported in the Washington Post and USA Today and other major news outlets, indicate that where schools have reopened, there has not been a spike in COVID cases. Moreover, just last week, Dr. Fauci stated in conversation with Governor Murphy that New Jersey is in a position to competently reopen its schools. Opening now will permit the children to experience in-person learning while the weather is warm enough to leverage outdoor space and the COVID numbers are good. If we wait until November, they may not have that chance. To be clear, I believe we need to support our teachers in their concerns. Support should include but not be limited to providing adequate personal protective equipment, training and technical support, opportunities to work from home when not teaching live. However, the present model of delaying opening until November 9th helps neither our students nor our teachers. We can do better for both. In conclusion, given number one, the immeasurable academic, social, and emotional harms caused to our children by the lack of in-person learning, reputational and financial harms to our districts, and the fact that our district meets all health and safety guidelines, there is no justification for waiting until November 9th to reopen our schools. I respectfully ask that you open schools as soon as possible. Mindy Rosen, 6 Fairhaven Court. Last meeting you spoke to the area above the vestibule at East and the costly problems associated with fixing it. When I asked my question last meeting, it was not about this area over the vestibule. Instead, it was about the long tarps over a completely different area at East, and the project looks massive. I am concerned that about the indoor safety of East after seeing the magnitude of the new problem at East. I am also concerned because it seems this new problem is near the kitchen, and if we are preparing meals at East, this presents a real concern for everyone. Please tell us what is going on at East. I am not talking about the vestibule problem. If you drive by East, you can see the tarps over quite a large area. What happened? How are you addressing this problem? What are the costs associated with this, and how does it affect the air quality in the schools? I'm especially concerned with the fact that it is near the kitchen. If we are using the kitchen to prepare meals for everyone, please answer these safety issue problems tonight. We all deserve knowing if our teachers at East are safe, and if any food being prepared is safe. Please show transparency tonight. Jill Ginsburg, 506 Mackin Drive. I have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader who are really struggling with remote learning. Every day is a complete struggle, ends in tears and frustration. What is being done to ease our teachers' concerns so kids can get back in school, at least starting with the hybrid? Is the school board meeting with the teachers union to try and come up with a solution? I don't see anything being done to improve our current situation. I only see Dr. Malash saying our buildings are safe, but they were safe in the beginning of September. That did not make our teachers feel comfortable enough. So how are they going to be comfortable in November? I recently saw a survey that was sent out, and the majority of teachers still did not feel safe or comfortable going back or with the remote hybrid schedule. I think the community deserves transparency on what is being done to help the situation. Instead of just saying we are going back in November and then switching to remote only, we would like concrete answers and solutions on how to get our kids and teachers safely back to school. This holds especially true for our elementary age children. Our kids deserve this. Thank you. Jen Nadio, 224 North Madison Avenue. Giuseppe had a meeting on Thursday, and one thing is very clear. There is still no plan for when hybrid opens November 9th. Many of our students with IEPs and 504s want to be back in school. We are all very concerned that teachers and principals will be left to make plans as they go along for students who have certain needs. We understand that a blanket plan is hard, but some items on these lists are inevitable. Toileting, diaper changing, behavioral assistance during an altercation, scheduling that may look different from March 2020, using the same beanbag chair, see-through masks, using the same FM systems, a student who can't wear a mask due to a medical condition, preschoolers not having lunch, food allergy concerns during snack, and many more. Should have a very specific plan for all to follow. If a plan needs to be tweaked due to a student's IEP, 504, or school situation, then the teacher, case manager, and principal can revise this plan. However, a basic plan should be put into place. We believe in being proactive, as a reaction causes worry for our students, teachers, and parents who do better with plans. Giuseppe has asked for IEPs and 504s to be open and specific items to be added to assist our students to succeed in remote and hybrid. As far as we know, this has not occurred. So our families would like to see the district plan that will cover their concerns. Many of us participated in the thought exchange and were concerned that our thoughts were limited to only 150 characters per area, with a goal of 300 characters. Obviously, more characters were needed to express the true concerns we all have. However, there were definitely some very concerning thoughts from our families. Our district administration has much to do to meet IEP goals and 504 accommodations of our students this year. Compensatory services look to be inevitable in many cases based on the thought exchange. Planning will give the district the opportunity to help parents who are now paying for their children to attend programs to keep them online so they don't homeschool or move them to a private school, which stops their IEP in 504. The families are in a very difficult position. It's the district administration's leadership that needs to help our families and teachers who will work very hard to keep up with the changes. Thank you for all your assistance. We look forward to a plan that will help our students succeed. Rick Short, 1002 Shelton Parkway. I don't understand why the school district and Cherry Hill board members continue to ignore the obvious things missing from our November 2020 reopening ventilation plan. Why do you continue to ignore CDC recommendations like pumping extra air 2 hours before the start of school and close of school, something Evesham School has implemented? Why do you continue to ignore why do you not have a written requirements for our current sports bus ventilation in all weather recommended by Harvard and university experts? Why do you not have a written operational plan for CH teachers and staff about AC window units recommended by Yale University experts? Ms. Seidel, why are you speaking up for a better ventilation plan for November 2020? Why do you ignore CDC, Harvard, and Yale HVAC COVID experts? And then he goes on to repeat that same question to Mrs. Neary, Mr. Avadia, Ms. Friedel, Mr. Goodwin, Ms. Schultz, Ms. Matlack, Ms. Tong, and Ms. Ryan. Ann Harrington, 107 Highgate Lane. Thank you for all that our teachers, schools, and administration are doing to focus on the education of our children during this time. Are there any lessons learned from the first 3 weeks of school or from surrounding districts that might lead to changes to the hybrid plan or we learn plan prior to November 9th? In particular, would the district reconsider the educational plan for children and families who elect to remain fully remote? The burden on the teacher and student may be great, and balance of concurrently teaching children in class or remote will be difficult. I would encourage the district and board to reconsider having dedicated remote-only teachers for students electing not to return in person. Thank you again for your time. Miriam Stern, 121 Ashford Road. It was encouraging to hear a response to the overwhelming frustration expressed by the community about the development of the Return to Learn plan. Several concerns outlined below. The plans for providing thorough and efficient education for students with special needs still has not been spelled out, and many IEPs and 504s are being violated. For example, my child's in-class resource class being 100% taught by the special education teacher because as of today, fourth week of school, there is no general education substitute teachers to teach the class. While violating the law is obviously a concern, the fundamental issue is that there are many students with special needs who already face so many struggles, who are left with so few of the supports they have in order to learn and thrive. Why are there several walls and a wing of the building at Cherry Hill East that are tarped and boarded up? What types of repairs are going on and what caused that to happen? What is the cost of those repairs? Are those repairs related to or independent of the recent work that is done to build the vestibule? What efforts are the district making to improve the air quality at our schools? Meeting the basic standard of air quality requirements is not reassuring given the serious concerns expressed by teachers and parents that COVID is an airborne virus. Is the district taking any steps to improve air quality as we will shortly be bringing many students into the building? One more, I believe. Oh, I have three more. Is it possible, this is from Ann Einhorn, is it possible to have the tech department split up since they are a team of 15? Half go to a school and the other half go to another school and spend the day evaluating and speaking to the staff as to what is working and what is not working. The district would have time before the projected opening of November 9th to evaluate each school and hopefully figure out how to fix the issues and have everyone on the same page. Alana Yaris, 329 Cherry Hill Boulevard. I had the privilege of attending the Board of Education of another local school district, and I'm completely appalled about how our district and the school board is running their meeting. The board meeting I attended allowed the public to speak at public comment. They did not require their board secretary to read the voluminous amount of emails that come in for public comment, some even being rude to her or other employees in the district and completely incompetent. How would you feel reading someone else's email airing their despise of you or others you work for? How have we not transitioned to hand raising from the public so that only those actually in attendance can speak, versus now when several emails come in and public comment can drone on for up to 45 minutes, sometimes longer, because of emails that were sent at any point since the last board meeting and public comment made. Now that we've been doing virtual board meetings for 6 months, I would think something would have changed. I am also completely annoyed that the district is requiring teachers to teach from their classrooms, and yet the Board of Education does not find it necessary to meet in person. Find a different space, make it work. That's what you told the teachers to do, and yet you sit at home with different backgrounds, constantly changing instead of meeting as a board in person. Get things done in an efficient manner. If you as adults can't attend in person, why and how do you expect our children to come back to school in person November 9th? Be and set the example. Do not follow, show you are leaders, not followers. Jill Gutman, thank you for revising and continue to revise the We Return to Learn plan. If the school opens under a hybrid model, what will happen if a student or immediate family member travels out of state and needs to quarantine for 2 weeks? How will the district address this issue? Will the district require any testing? Will there be a remote-only learning option with dedicated remote-only teachers? I'm requesting remote-only teachers for remote learners so teachers are not splitting their focus between virtual and in-person students. Please revise the Monday socially emotional learning day or have an option to opt out or choose activities that would be acceptable to substitute in its place. Is a more reliable platform like Zoom being looked at, since students and staff keep getting kicked off Google Meet? We upgraded our internet and our work computers stay logged on, yet Google Meet continues to kick our children off during class. Please consider decreasing the amount of online live hours for virtual instruction. At the last BOE meeting, Dr. Malash said 6 hours when inappropriate, yet there still has not been a decrease in time, including for elementary students. By what date will this change occur? Is the district considering any outdoor classes and tents to use for classes? I would like the district to prioritize special education students who have more complicated concerns and needs. Those parents should be given the first option to have their children return to school first. What benchmarks are in place to return to school? Please consider having the same school lunchtime for all siblings in the same school. Please consider redistricting the middle schools based on geographical location rather than by lottery. Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard. I wanted to reach out and thank our administration for being willing to constantly update and shift in response to the needs of all our students in the district. Unfortunately, I had to miss some of the initial presentation concerning the We Return to Learn plan, so we may have already covered some of the concerns I have along equity lines, but I figured there is no harm to reiterate a couple of my major concerns that directly impact the access to equitable education for our students who are the most marginalized. In particular, this around grading practices. I shared in the last BOE meeting my concern around current grading practices. I want to reiterate that we must take a much closer look at the current grading practices in our schools. I appreciate all the hard work that has been done to put together a well thought out and comprehensive remote hybrid learning plan. However, I notice there's a clear lack of information or guidelines around grading to ensure equitable grading for all students. It is very easy for even the most well-intentioned teachers to overlook the experiences of students whose home lives might be radically different from their own. I ask that a set of teaching guidelines be established and sent out to teachers that would include optional pass-fail grading, removable participation grades, and increased flexibility with deadlines, reassessment opportunities. And that is it.
Thank you. Were there any items you wanted to address this evening?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Seidel. There were comments about the We Return to Learn plan, as Dr. Mahan talked about in the presentation. Each of the level committees is getting together, they're reconvening, looking at the feedback, taking feedback from staff, taking feedback from students, taking feedback from parents, about what's going well, what's not going well. I will reiterate, I don't believe that anybody should be online for 6 hours a day. I know that there have been changes. It's something I've spoken with teachers in buildings about. I know that it's something structurally that Dr. Mahan and the committee have looked at. in terms of what their formal recommendations are and what they will be coming out. In terms of the platforms, people asked about the electronic platforms. We continue. Google is the primary platform that we are using. There have been discussions about Zoom and about other platforms that are there. You remember back in the spring, Zoom was banned in many school districts and in many universities because of issues that were going on with it. It's an ebb and flow in terms of technology platforms. We have had more success the longer that we've been in school with maintaining kids and staff members online in those classes. Thank you, Dr. Podowitz, for again sending the information from the October 2011 document. The project that's going on at East, the wall project that's going on, that's a project that started last spring. It has nothing to do with the vestibule that was done. And I think there's some confusion because at the last board meeting, there was a discussion about the vestibule that had been completed. There was not a problem with the vestibule that was completed at High School East. There was not an issue. There was not a leak. There was not a problem in the floor. The issue where we found a problem in the crawl space was in one of the breezeways farther into the building. The walls that are being worked on, these are ongoing projects that have taken place at High School East over the last, Mrs. Sugar's 4 years, 5 years, in different areas of the building where exterior walls and breezeways have been redone. We have open school at High School East with all the staff members and 2,200 students there. In the past with these types of projects. The projects are continuing. The area that's being worked on is exterior. It is walled off. There are tarps that are up there. The kitchen is still being used. There are high standards that we have to follow in terms of food safety and food preparation. We're very proud of the work that our Aramark staff has done going back into March with the distribution of meals, the continued distribution of meals throughout the course of the summer and now into the fall. That all is taken into consideration. We would not prepare meals and they would not prepare meals in a kitchen that is not safe. It is a safe space in which to work. We are working with teachers to help to ease their concerns, to help to identify what those specific concerns are, and to help support them. Again, IEPs, 504s, questions. There has not been a blanket opening of IEPs and 504s, nor is that something that we can do. If there are specific questions about individual children, again, case managers, the best place to start with those questions and to start to address them. We are looking at what does it look like to try to bring children back into school. There's been discussions, goes back into the summer as the committees met, developing the We Return to Learn plan about virtual only teachers. There are some problems that are inherent with that in terms of the size of the district, the number of teachers that would be involved and who would be teaching which children, especially as a transition from one to the next, depending upon what the situation is. But that is a discussion that's taking place, my understanding, among the committee members. Looking at the technology department, there's a role of technology and technologists play in terms of support with some of the software platforms and the technology. The instructional side, this is why we moved technology underneath the curriculum and instruction office, working with the supervisors, working with Dr. Mahan and her staff, something that we continue to look at as well. Troubleshooting goes on and continues in all the schools with technology. We are pleased that we were able to add a position for this academic year, which is a district technology coach. It's one teacher. She's an expert in the use of technology in the instructional setting. She's been a teacher, and this is her 21st year in the district, was a teacher for 20 years at the high school level. So that is taking place as well. And again, as I always do, and people brought this up in their comments tonight, incredibly thankful for the work that our staff members are doing. Our certificated and instructional staff, our support staff, the educational assistants, the secretaries, the cleaners, the custodians, the maintenance folks, our therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, our child safety members, our counselors, the team from Aramark, the work that everybody continues to do on a daily basis to meet individual needs of children. And again, prospectively, and just to remind families, kids are going to have good days, kids are going to have bad days. There are going to be challenges. There are challenges in our schools. There are challenges at home. It is such a dramatic change for children who are working at home. They are not used to working in that environment either. They're used to working in a school where they're seeing their peers, seeing other people around. I appreciate people's patience. I appreciate people's advocacy for their children, for the children overall in the school district. Again, take all the information, as Dr. Mahan said, we are listening. We are taking that information. We'll continue to move forward. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will make a motion to adjourn our meeting tonight. Ms. Schultz, can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening,
Good
everyone.
night.
Thank you.